So here's the thing. I unironically might play Guild Wars on stream in a few days. I've been really considering it, and I've actually gone to the step now to download the Guild Wars. So we're getting close to me simply trying out the Guild Wars, and this video right here is a video by somebody who we have seen this guy's content in the past on the Guild Wars as well, and this video is from Deployable Lover. I spent 250 plus hours in Guild Wars 2 to find out if you should as well. A highly relevant video to me at least, and let's see what he has to say on the Guild Wars. The volume is set to max. Perfect.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I do hope you guys are doing well. In today's video, I want to talk to you about my time spent in Guild Wars 2 over the last couple of months. As of the recording of this video, I have now around circa 250 to 300 hours in the game. So not a brand new player, but still fairly new. And I basically want to give you my thoughts and feelings on the game thus far. So when I came into Guild Wars 2,
Dude, if he happens to see one of my reaction videos at some point, does he have a second channel somewhere? Because I feel like his voice, I've heard it before. I think. Sure, we have seen 3 videos from this guy, including this one. So it might just be that I've seen his videos in the past, but it's just such a familiar voice. Good voice.
Had zero expectations, to be honest. I wasn't a veteran player. I didn't have a dusty old account from launch that I had to worry about. I didn't even have someone guiding me through the systems. I'm not really a streamer, so I don't have to worry about any of that. And I had no one really telling me what to watch out for or what to expect. I guess the beauty of that is I was just a new character, a new player in the world of Tyria, and boy, what a journey this has become. And now, after spending all of those hours in Tyria, wandering through the many forests, the deserts, the many battlefields, spending time in PvP, world versus world, fractals, you name it, I've got a lot to talk about. Now, as much as I adore Guild Wars 2, I'm going to try and keep this as unbiased as possible by chucking in some dislikes amongst some of the likes, and there isn't many, but there is definitely a few points to reference here. And there are also a lot of things that have genuinely surprised me about the game just flat out that I just wasn't expecting. So hopefully this gives you a clearer picture as to what to expect maybe in your first few hours of picking up the game, or maybe if you're a veteran player, this will cast your mind back on when you first started the game too. So with that, sit back, relax, and let's jump straight into the video. So like many of you, when you jump into the game for the first time, one of the biggest things that really struck me was just how gorgeous the open world of this game is. And it was instantly clear in my mind why people speak so fondly of it. This game doesn't just exist around you, it really breathes. It's a living thing. You're constantly seeing players glide overhead, fly over you on sky scales and griffins, run past you with commander tags up. It's just carnage, but it's really, really refreshing to see. There are so many random events that just pop up that everyone takes part in. There is a real community feeling here right out of the gate. The events I just mentioned as well, I kind of thought these would be just filler, alongside a main quest, but these are fully fleshed out meta events that often chain together to unlock more significant things to do. They are unpredictable, they're dynamic, they make the world feel active, and that is something that a lot of MMOs struggle with, period. I found that every single time I wandered off the beaten path, I found something worth discovering, whether that was just a new cave to explore, a hero point, a mastery point, maybe a treasure chest, maybe a collectible. Tyria has a lot of things going for it. There are many abandoned ruins with rich history. There are many jumping puzzles, which, by the way, I really, really enjoy the jumping puzzles in this game. It's very hard for an MMO to pull off jumping puzzles because of server tick and latency, but this game just tends to do it quite well and really kind of seamlessly. One thing I started to adore really early on was chasing the many vistas around the game. So for those of you that aren't aware, you go to these, I guess, points of interest is what they are. You click on them and the camera just pans around the scenery and you get a real good look at Guild Wars 2's really unique art style, and with the many colors that it throws together in the color palette, it is really quite beautiful to look at. I enjoy massively that the game just doesn't chase realism, it chases atmosphere instead. It's got this kind of painted aesthetic, and that means that the game still holds up even after all of these years because it's somewhat unique. There were many moments where I would just simply stop moving and just take in the scenery. It really is a game that makes you want to slow down. I think as a genre, as players of a genre, we kind of have the opposite mentality of that. We've been taught over the years to just rush, get through to the end game, get to max level, and really get into the main content. But with Guild Wars 2, it made me kind of care less about getting to the end and care more about being present in the world. Now, I've been quite critical of the story quite early on. I feel like the base game story really isn't that good, but I did kind of enjoy elements of the personal story. But really, where the game comes into its own is Living World Season 1 all the way through. I really feel like from Living World Season 1, and especially from the base game, I feel like the developers really learned from not just their mistakes, but maybe the shortcomings in the story early on. I really enjoyed the whole concept of the whole Living World series, seeing a world essentially change around you, and the way that it was implemented in the game, I've come to understand, was very different from its launch as to the way we see it now. But as you go
I will say, just looking at the game as well, I really like the graphics of the game and like the gameplay. Looking at this, for example, this right here looks really cool to me. I still love the wings, by the way, and according to the comments on a recent video of mine where I reacted to another Guild Wars video, either by this guy or somebody else, where I mentioned the wings, apparently those wings are from the shop. I'm not sure if these are the same ones, but are many of these wings obtainable in the cash shop? And the question is, can I get any wings like this for free? Because I would like to see, I'm probably going to end up trying the free-to-play version of Guild Wars and see what you can obtain in the game for free by simply playing the game, right? I would love to get some sort of wings like this. Doesn't have to be exactly the same, but just the wings. I think like those wings are so cool, and it's cooler than any transmog that I've seen in WoW in a long time. I'm just gonna say, like, these wings, man, they are crazy.
a world essentially change around you,
As an Arcade player as well, just seeing these graphics right here kinda throws me back to Arcade, man. It's way more Arcade-ish than WoW is, at least.
and the way that it was implemented in the game, I've come to understand, was very different from its launch as to the way we see it now. But as you go ahead and you play these different chapters, you start to see the developers just trying something new, and that's really, really impressive. ArenaNet weren't afraid to try something that may not work, and do you know what? Hey, if it didn't work, at least they've tried it. They can hold their head high and say, look, we tried something new, it didn't work, and that's on us. But really, I feel like a lot of the stuff they put into the game over the years really checks out, and the product they've got now is really polished. As I said, the personal story starts kind of small and humble. You're just sort of helping your home region, you're meeting allies, dealing with a lot of local problems, but there is a lot of outside noise. There's too many NPCs you're meeting, too many forgettable faces. But when the Living World seasons kick in and the expansions kick in, everything just ramps up dramatically. You start to care about these characters a lot more. Now, some of which you'll have a harder time with than others, but the way these characters develop, I really kind of struggled with the idea of story building outside of games like Final Fantasy XIV, because that has always been the gold standard for quite a long time now. But Guild Wars 2 is a very, very close second. And I would argue that in some areas, it actually best. There are people you meet in the story very early on that just evolve organically over time, some just through natural growth, but some through a lot of pain. Your relationship
Yeah, like graphics like this, man. I really like it. I think this is super cool. And it's a whole different world of graphics than the World of Warcraft is. Now, some people might prefer the WoW graphics, and here's the thing. For World of Warcraft, I prefer WoW graphics. To me, it's not like every game needs graphics like this, but it's just the graphics needs to make sense for the game and the gameplay, if that makes sense. So for example, I love Minecraft graphics in Minecraft. I love Terraria graphics in Terraria. I love how Stardew Valley graphics are in Stardew Valley. I love World of Warcraft graphics in World of Warcraft. I love the classic WoW graphics in classic WoW, and I like these graphics for Guild Wars, right? I think this is super cool. Now, I was going to go somewhere with this, but I kind of went on a different path, and I don't really know where I was going, but let's just keep watching for a
with
bit.
these characters, they deepen conflict.
Oh yeah, he was talking about the lore. I've played Final Fantasy, and the lore in that game is fantastic. Here's the thing. In WoW, when you get served a cutscene, you want to skip it. In Final Fantasy, you get served a cutscene, you end up crying. Like at the end of the story, I think this was it in Heavensward? Or the expansion before? I kind of forget. Played Realm Reborn, for Heavensward, either way, at some point, this has been a few years ago now, I played through Final Fantasy, and I read all of the quests, I watched all of the cutscenes. When I did my first playthrough, I ended up crying at the end, man. a couple of manly tears, not so manly, but just like, yeah, it was a beautiful story.
They really feel earned, really, and they kind of feel quite brutal in many ways. It really seems like the game isn't afraid to go into unexpected directions, and I found myself genuinely invested, and I was laughing at some of the lighter moments. I was appreciating the world building, and sometimes I was feeling genuine emotion at certain parts of the story. The storytelling doesn't just get better, it gets more confident, I guess is the point here. It's kind of rare to see, honestly, in MMO writing as a whole. Guild Wars 2 has a fantastic class-based system, which I really have come to love over time. The game gives you an absurd amount of freedom to play around with. You're not locked to just one single weapon type. You're not stuck in one combat role forever. Once you get into the elite specializations, which come at level 80, which is max level, these really transform your class into a whole new variation of
Can you get to level 80 in the free-to-play version, by the way? Or do you have to buy any of the expansions?
itself. Some of these variations are just slight differences to what you're used to, but in some elite specs, it's a whole new class kit entirely. This means that each elite spec isn't just a passive upgrade, it kind of fundamentally changes the identity of your whole class. Now, because Guild Wars 2 doesn't really have a set trinity, there's nothing set in stone to say you're the tank, you're the healer, you're the DPS, at least not early on. What it's had to do is be quite fluid with some of the classes. Now, that means that not all classes can strictly just be damage dealers. Some of them can flex into support healers, and some can be a bit more tanky and generally have more toughness to take more damage. This means that in the later game, when you're doing, for example, strikes or raids, from what I've seen, there is a big focus on certain roles being filled within the group, as you would with traditional MMOs, but this time more focused on how can you support your group via boons, for example, giving might, alacrity, quickness, that sort of thing. Now, I feel like for a new player, especially if you're a new player coming from other MMOs, this can be quite confusing because you're kind of just instantly in the mindset of, right, who's the healer, who's the tank, who's the DPS, and it just really doesn't work like that. Essentially, if you're the closest one to the boss, you're tanking, and if you can provide some sort of buff or healing, you're healing. That's literally it. Again, that's a very basic understanding from someone with very little hours in the game compared to veterans, but that's my understanding so far. The game will have you experimenting with different traits, different gear sets, runes, sigils, all sorts of different things to play around with. There are many rotations to try and perfect in the game, and that will fill a lot of your time, honestly. I mean, if you're someone who likes build crafting, this is a great game for you. There are websites dedicated just for builds. People go out of the way to make it kind of like a full-time thing to find the best builds, the best skills to use with certain weapons, the best stats to have on certain armor with certain runes and sigils. It really is a black hole. The depth in Guild Wars 2, especially when it comes to classes and builds, is definitely addicting, and that's something, again, that very few MMOs get right. Now, as someone who has typically always leaned towards PvE, I didn't expect to find myself playing so much world versus world or PvP, but surprisingly I did, and I really enjoyed it. And I mean, there were some moments where I had no idea what I was doing. For example, world versus world is chaotic, it's messy, it's sometimes really overwhelming. In fact, it is definitely overwhelming if you're a new player, but in the best possible way. There is nothing quite like joining a huge Zerg group and just charging into castles, hitting battering rams at gates, throwing catapults.
Do they have like open world PvP in Guild Wars? And if so, is it like an opt-in or a opt-out thing? Like if I'm out questing, can anybody from like any other faction or something just end up killing me at some point? Because if so, I kinda wanna opt out of that while I'm leveling. If there's a way to opt out. There's a reason why I usually don't like PvP servers in WoW either. It depends though. At launch I played on PvP servers, it's great, but if I'm starting out right now and everybody is higher level than me, then no thanks, I'll do PvE.
At walls, storming keeps. It's really, it hits a sweet spot, if I'm honest. Even if for the most part I didn't fully understand what was going on, all I did know was that whatever was happening was epic. Now, PvP, on the other hand, is actually incredibly accessible in this game, pretty much from the gate, to my understanding. You've got access to PvP, even though it's, unrated for the most part, but everyone's at the same stats. You basically just pick and choose your gear. You pick I think a trinket and some sigils, and away you go. As long as you put your build together, you can PvP at a pretty even playing field. This I did not see myself getting into. I've never really been a massive PvP guy, especially in MMOs, because it's always been a bit clunky and a bit weird, but there seems to be something quite skillful and something quite competitive in the PvP scene of Guild Wars 2 outside of just spamming abilities at each other, knowing when to take certain points, when to push, when to not push, when to revive, when to execute, when to use certain abilities. It really kind of builds together into this sort of seamless dance that you try and perfect with your teammates. And there are certain different game modes for different things. One time we'll have you storming a keep to kill a lord. Other times you're just capturing points to accumulate the most points, and it just keeps things nice and fresh. So as much as I'm yet to do any ranked PvP, I must say for the most part I have enjoyed what I have played, but my real fun, if I'm honest, has come from the open world grouping, and it is just, it's effortless. It really is. There are a lot of events in Guild Wars 2 that you need a group for. You need people around you. For example, if you're taking on certain enemies that are like champions or legendary enemies, they're quite hard. You're not going to be able to do it on your own. And quite thankfully, in Guild Wars 2, there are people everywhere. It's not like, vertical games, for example, with your vertical progression, where a lot of the areas that you're in early on are completely barren because everyone's moved on. Because of the horizontal progression in Guild Wars 2, there are people readily available to jump in and give you a hand and talk to you and give you tips. And that just feels so organic. And you never really feel like you have to sit in looking for group. You never have to message people to join because everyone just dives in. As long as you get a hit, you get credit. And it kind of builds this positive community out of something that's always been quite negative. There's always been this grey cloud around, that's my mob, don't take my mob. You can't steal my boss, I want the loot, and all this sort of stuff. And it's just not really here in Guild Wars 2. If we shift over to the more instant content, the content that I have done, fractals have quickly become one of my go-to activities that I just check in and do every day. They are incredibly approachable from the moment you hit level 80, and they scale really nicely with difficulty depending on what you want out of the experience. The onboarding is really smooth thanks to the new Fractal Quick Play beta, but what I will say is that you get a lot less socialization out of the quick play for obvious reasons than you do if you were to just group with a party, so just be a bit mindful of that. The quick play definitely gives you an idea of some of the mechanics, although they're a little bit watered down, and it's a great way to just get your feet into the door, especially if you're someone that's not overly comfortable with maybe even grouping in general, and you don't want to worry about getting flamed for doing something wrong. This is definitely a good start. However, and I did say that I would add some kind of dislikes to this, even at the hours that I've put into the game, I have kind of hit a point where I feel like I'm just running the same fractals over and over again each day. It doesn't really feel like it's that fresh. Maybe I'm missing something. This could be user error, but I have kind of found they're slightly getting stale quicker than I thought they would. But with me now about to try strikes and eventually raids, I'm hoping that will kind of level out the monotony a little bit, and maybe they're just not that fresh for me at the moment because I tend to just lean on them all the time for PvE content. Either way, if you're new, take that with a pinch of salt because they are great to do daily, especially for materials, sometimes even gear. And, it's a good little progression to chase outside of something that is typically more horizontal. Now, speaking of progression, one of the major parts of Guild Wars 2 that I've really come to enjoy is, of course, the horizontal progression philosophy. At first, I was a little bit skeptical, like many, but I actually kind of enjoy now that there is no endless treadmill, if you like. I will still play.
Yo, they have horizontal progression in Guild Wars, man. This alone makes me kinda wanna try it, man. I've never really played any game that has horizontal progression, unless Arcade was like that, but I don't really feel like it was. I mean, sure, when Aurora came out, for example, some of the older gear was still relevant, but they did add levels in the expansion, so even that I think was more vertical.
Other vertical games, I appreciate there is that element of the MMO genre that exists, but in Guild Wars 2, there is kind of no your gear is obsolete in 3 months' time. Pretty much what you've got now will still be relevant ideally in, 1, 2, maybe 3 years' time, depending on how long the game goes on for. Realistically, once you've reached Ascended or Legendary gear, if you're, that way inclined, then you're set. And that's kind of a huge relief coming from MMOs that constantly move the goalpost. Every new season, every new update or new patch, your gear is obsolete, basically, and that's not the case in Guild Wars 2. The mastery system, my god, this deserves a ton of praise too. It really gives you a reason to revisit content, explore old zones, and just gradually improve the overall abilities of your account. Now, this is permanent progression that respects your time without turning into burnout fuel for the most part. I feel like
Alright, somebody pretend that I'm a huge noob and explain the mastery to me.
This is a great way of distracting players from just chasing gear all the time. I mean, of course, you don't do that in Guild Wars 2. This definitely makes the game feel like a long-term
Hey,
adventure,
City
or at least it
Guy.
did to me, over and above just a gear chasing job. Now, another slight negative that I kind of have to mention here is the loot. Now, this is part and parcel of the horizontal progression. I get this, but Guild Wars 2, it showers you in loot, and I am not the only person to share this opinion. Loot just pours out of absolutely everything from chests, mobs, events, bosses, but you name it. The issue I've got, and that's not necessarily the fact that I'm getting loot, it's the fact that none of it really matters on a surface level. Now, before you say anything, I fully understand a lot of these get grinded into materials, sold for currency, so on and so forth. However, a fundamental component of getting loot that I guess I've been trained over the years to enjoy is the idea of getting an upgrade, finding something that I can use, finding something that's going to benefit me or my account, and I just don't really get that same feeling in Guild Wars 2. If I get a chest, if I get a collectible, it kind of just goes into my inventory and I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll just hit automatically salvage. I'll identify my clothing, my greens, my blues, and then I'll just grind it straight down. And that kind of sucks a little bit. It's not so bad when you're leveling up, doing the 1 through 80, because some of the gear you can actually use. But once you hit level 80, most rares and even exotics, to be honest, you'll just be doing away with. You'll collect the skin maybe because you'll unlock a lot of the cosmetics through some of these weapons and armors. But once you've collected the cosmetics, you'll either sell it, destroy it, salvage it, whatever you want to do. So yeah, because of that, you kind of lose the sense of excitement, at least very early on, or I did, I would say. And in most games, it's kind of like you get this feeling of, oh wow, like I've got something really cool and shiny to look forward to. And there are elements of that in Guild Wars 2, but they're mainly done through achievements and legendary weapon farming, that sort of thing. But when it comes to actual loot, it's more like, oh, cool, I've just got some more materials to store. I totally understand why the system is this way, especially when you're max level and you need the materials for collections, for money, whatever else. But as a new player, it was kind of strange to constantly get loot that I feel like I just wasn't using or taking advantage of. Now, to further the gripe a little bit, and I try not to get too disheartened here at all, I try and keep this quite light-hearted, but I really enjoyed leveling my first character. I really did. But Guild Wars 2, there were so many great classes, okay? There is so much potential that you just want to explore. So naturally, for me, I wanted to create an alternate character. And whilst the journey to 80 is fun and full of exploration on your first character,
Dude, this is gonna be me, by the way, in Guild Wars as well. It's me in every single MMORPG that I play. I will never ever only have one character. I like leveling. I really like leveling and I like playing the game in different ways. So I want to have like a tank, I want to have a healer, I want to have a ranged physical DPS like a hunter or archer, and I also want to have a kind of a mage, right? So at least 5 different ways to play the game. You have like tank, healer, melee DPS, ranged physical DPS, ranged magical DPS, and if it's some sort of like melee magical DPS as well, like a battle mage or something, that would be great as well. 6 different ways to play the game. And then you have the different classes being different as well. Just think about World of Warcraft, mage versus a warlock, very different gameplay.
when I started my alts, that enthusiasm kind of evaporated a little bit. Now, I must say that yes, there are certain benefits to map completion across all characters, but I don't know, it was kind of painful after a while. Luckily, because I'd bought quite a few expansions in the game, I'd been given a few boosts. Now, I'd done my first character completely naturally, but I ended up boosting the rest of the characters and getting full sets of gear, getting some waypoints unlocked.
That right there is probably a smart thing, by the way, and that is what I'm doing as well, if or when I'm playing Guild Wars. Even if I end up buying an expansion and getting a boost, I am not using the boost at the start. Like, boosting yourself to end the game, the first thing you do in the game, is possibly the worst thing you can do, because you don't get to learn about the world, you don't get to learn about your class, you're just thrown to the end game and be like, here, this is where the game starts. I feel like leveling is just a much better and easier way to start the game. You have less systems, less currencies, less things to think about, and you just like, you start playing the game and then see how you like it, right? Boosting to the end game is never the answer, especially if you ask me. Like, if I was playing Classic WoW and I got a level 60 boost and started the game at level 60, I think I would enjoy Classic WoW a lot less. Not saying that I don't like the level 60 content, but like starting there as your first time playing the game, like that sounds absolutely horrible to me.
Other goodies, dies, that sort of thing. But for the most part, the map was completely barren. And I understand why that is to an extent, because you can't just transport all of your hero points that you've earned on one character over to the next. They can't necessarily be shared, but I did just kind of feel like I wish there was a way that some of this map completion can kind of come across so I don't literally have to do it all again. Now, with that said, I do enjoy exploring the map. There are some times when I'm playing the game where I don't want to be running fractals, I don't want to do PvP or world versus world, that maybe I will go out and just have a little jaunt around and explore things. But really, after you've explored it once, it kind of loses the magic just a little bit in terms of, okay, I'm going to go here and get rewarded for this, but also kind of see what's new. After a while, you feel like you're doing it because you have to do it. Well, not have to do it, but you get what I mean. Maybe if there was a very small quality of life change to that, that would kind of help. But that kind of leads me onto my next segue, if you like, of quality of life. And we've got to talk about the UI of the game, because the UI, honestly, the function is really clean. I'm not denying that. I kind of enjoy the minimalist, artsy kind of style of it, but it is just so uncustomizable compared to other MMOs. And you could argue that a lot of MMOs are too much, like the likes of WoW, and I would agree with you completely. But there are so many things that I just want to move, I want to resize, reposition, and the game just really doesn't let me do that over and above maybe moving the map or the chat box around. For a game with so many complex features and combat details, the UI just feels a little bit stuck in the past to me. It's nice to look at, but functionally, I don't know, there's just things I would really like to see a bit better. Graphically, though, Guild Wars 2 holds up extremely well, especially because of.
Are you telling me that I will not be able to move certain UI elements? Because to me, I really want to move like those action bars and also the basically everything that is in the middle bottom here. I would like to move to at least another place. Don't know exactly where, but another place.
Its unique artistic direction. Some of the zones are genuinely breathtaking, and I don't say that lightly at all. But what I did find is when adjusting the graphics settings, it can be surprisingly difficult to kind of get the right setting in certain zones. For example, some presets look too washed out, some look too sharp or over contrasted. And bloom, I've kind of fought with the bloom setting my entire time playing this game. In some areas, it feels really essential, but in other areas it feels too much and kind of blinding. So it's kind of hard to find that halfway house, but really this is just a nitpick, to be honest. Otherwise, the graphics are really good. Now, I'm not going to go into too much of a tangent here, but we have to mention one of the obvious positives to Guild Wars 2 being the mount system. The mounts in this game, I'm just going to say this now, are absolutely undefeated in any other MMO. The mounts feel like they are genuinely living, breathing entities. They react to you, you play around with them. They feel a lot more dynamic than just whistling to get on a mount, fly this piece of cardboard from A to B. It's not like that in Guild Wars 2. Every mount has a different job, a different role. There are so many different cool skins that you can get for them. And the fact that you can add mastery points to them to unlock new abilities for them to kind of further build that connection with you and your mount, I just feel is really cool. So yeah, absolutely gold standard for mounts. So in fear of this video drawing out for way too long, after 250 hours, what's the final verdict? What do I think? Well, Guild Wars 2 is genuinely, and I mean this genuinely, one of the most unique and most enjoyable MMOs that I've ever played. The open world is alive and it's inviting. The exploration feels endless and the community is, for the most part, wonderful. You guys over here, you have one of the best communities that I've ever experienced. And I know that's cliche to say because every MMO says that, but Guild Wars 2 genuinely really has it. The story, I've become really impressed with. This gets better and better over time. The classes and builds are insanely fun, and it's just a really easy game to play. Not just necessarily in difficulty, but I never feel like, oh, I've got to log into Guild Wars 2. Oh, this is such a pain. I just feel like I'm having fun all the time. It's not flawless, of course. You know, loot to me is quite underwhelming and quite annoying. Alts can kind of feel like a bit of a pain sometimes to get around the map with. And the UI definitely, in my opinion, needs some slight modernization. But even with those flaws, I'm still excited. Every time I log in, I'm discovering new corners of the world. Even now, I'm still learning new builds. I'm still looking forward to the content I haven't even touched yet, like, for example, End of Dragons or all the other expansions that come after that. And I'm really looking forward to getting into strikes and raids. Guild Wars 2 for me has been a slow burn to begin with, but it's been a really satisfying one. And I'm genuinely curious to see where the next 250 hours will take me. So if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more Guild Wars 2 stuff here on the channel, please do consider leaving a like rating, subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you in Tyria.
There we go. That was a good video, by the way. That was a good video. I really appreciate the breakdown of both the good and a couple of bad things as well. Because they did like add a couple of not really super bad things, but more about just instead of just glazing in Guild Wars, it was more of a somewhat objective take, I guess. But it's cool. So the title was I spent 250 hours in Guild Wars to find out if you should as well. I feel like based on the quick TLDR at the end, it seems to be worth playing, and here's the thing, I've already downloaded the game. I'm pretty much ready to give it a try, and we probably have a couple of days to spare when it comes to waiting for player housing. I honestly might try it this week, I'm not even going to lie. Might be trying some Guild Wars, just because I haven't played a new MMO in a long time anyway, and it could be fun to just give it a try and see what it's about. And it looks really cool. It's a game that I genuinely want to play, so hey, I mean, might as well try it out. It's free,